you all for joining us today. It's great to see so many of you joining us. Um, my name is Juanita Rodriguez. For those of you who haven't been able to join us in previous webinars, and we are today here with Maria Mercedes Salmon, the REACT for North America, Central America, and the Caribbean for this last webinar in our series of updates and trends webinars. So I hope you have find these webinars useful. We want to, of course, give you the opportunity to connect as much as possible with our region. And I hope these webinars that we have had and this final one today have been useful for you. So before we begin, I wanted to just kind of like mention some well, details that I've been communicating via email, and just to make sure that those messages are getting across. So, well, we're very excited because we're 1 week and 1 day away of the date of the fair. And we're very excited. We're working very hard to have all the details finalized. And as I sent you as I communicated via email, we will be having a test run, a dry run of the platform on Monday. We have divided the universities into groups. So the idea is that on those specific times that we have set up for you, that you can connect to the platform following the guidelines that we have also shared with you. And we will be having advisors, Education USA advisors, chatting with you as mock students. And so that way you can try out the chat feature and see if you have any questions or if you have any, well, technical difficulties, so we can fix everything before the day of the fair. On that day, we will have the tech support from BFairs. So that's why we have kind of like those 2 specific time slots. So I hope that at least 1 person from each institution can join us for that try run. And we will meet you there on Monday. Just as a note, and I included this in the email in the emails that I sent to both you as like the main points of contact for the university, and also to all the registered representatives. We have some system requirements for the platform. So just please make sure that you access the fair using Chrome. We have noticed that that's the best browser to use the platform in, and also that you access it in a laptop or a desktop computer. If you access in a tablet or smartphone as a booth admin, which is what you're going to be like a representative, you are not going to be able to use the chat feature. So make sure you access as a in a laptop or in a desktop computer. So I think those were kind of like all my housekeeping notes for you. So I will give the floor to Maria Mercedes so that she can start her presentation.
Thank you so much, Juanita. It's so great to see so many familiar names joining us this afternoon. I'm very excited that you all will be participating in our huge endeavor here with the virtual fair for the Western Hemisphere. We are very excited about it. We hope that you are able to meet some wonderful students and leads for that. But the purpose of today's session is to give you a little bit of background, context of what is happening, a few ideas and a reference of what an average student from each of my sub-regions, which I will get into in a moment, also could expect in meeting with you during the fair, and also some tips and recommendations for you to make this a successful experience for everyone. As Juanita said, for those of you that I still haven't met, I am Maria Mercedes Salmon, and I am the REACT who covers Canada Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. I've been in the position of REAC for 8 years now, but with the Education USA Network for 18 years now. So I'm very excited to be here today to share with you some of the knowledge that we have so far and what is going on. But first, I would like to start by asking you some questions. So I would appreciate if you would complete this poll so that I get a little bit of context from all of you. Juanita, are you able to see the poll? Okay, great. I see some results coming in.
Yes.
Thank you. Great. Okay, we have some 4-year institutions. We have some 2-year institutions, some master's college, university, other. I'm curious to know. I encourage you to submit comments in the chat box and questions in the Q&A box. At the end of the session, we will be answering and addressing some of those. Mainly, you will be representing undergraduate. We have a lot of graduate and intensive English and some short-term programs as well. And also, again, other. Oh, great. So for 64% of you, this will be the first time participating in a fair with the Western Hemisphere. Excellent. Well, thank you for thinking about us and seeing the potential that our region has to get you some great students to your campus. And in terms of your experience, I see that 36% of you have experience with my region. So kudos to you, and I'm very excited to meet all the others, and hopefully when this is all over, we get to see you here in the region more often. Great, wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer that. This gives me a little bit more context of who am I speaking to today, and I will begin with the overview. As mentioned, I cover everything from Central America North and East. In my portfolio, there are 25 countries covering 56 centers. Most of them are comprehensive centers. If you're familiar with our network, you would know that we have three levels of center services, comprehensive, standard, and reference centers. So comprehensive would be the center where you can expect to have the full range of Education USA services offered, full-time advisors, or at least 30 to 40 hours a week. We have the standard centers, which in most cases, it's a part-time operation. And reference centers, which are centers or most often are a reference center with collection of materials. We don't necessarily have an appointed advisor. There is always going to be somebody trained on staff who can help students with the materials that we have there, but we don't necessarily offer advising services there regularly. So in my region, mostly comprehensive, 13 standard centers and 7 reference centers. I have a team of 51 wonderful advisors. I hope that you are familiar with most of them, and if not, I'm gonna be launching a series of Instagram live series with the advisors, so to introduce them all to you, you're more familiar with them during these times when you cannot visit them. I do have some exciting news. We have some new countries added. Well, one country, Aruba, is new in my portfolio, so we're very excited about that. Our new center in Aruba will cover Curacao and Bonaire as well. And we have finally resumed our operation in Bahamas Bahamas, and in Panama. So I hope that these two countries are in your radar, and Aruba is a new exciting country as well. A lot of students from the Dutch Caribbean are now refocusing their interest in the US due to proximity. And so exciting opportunities there for you to look for. And overall, last year, my region reported 1.3 million interactions with students. So that's great for you to know. In terms of numbers, the North America, Central America, and Caribbean region, it covers 57% of the total Western Hemisphere students in the US. This also represents 5.6% of the world total number of international students in the US. Of course, Canada, which is the 5th largest sending country to the US, has the lead in the region, but also followed by Mexico, who ranks 10th. And all of the Caribbean, you must know that the Caribbean is the highest sending region in terms of per capita numbers. So a great sub-region if you don't necessarily think of the Caribbean as a recruitment destination, then maybe after this session, I'll motivate you to rethink that. And Central America, which actually has the spotlight because Central America is the sub-region in my portfolio that has steady growth in numbers of undergraduate students, graduate students, and OPT for the past several years. So if you have not been paying close attention to Central America, I encourage you to also keep these countries in your radar. Now, in terms of outbound mobility, we also capture a good number of the total US study abroad population. About 33,000 students from the US come to the NCAC region to study abroad every year. And we do have 2 countries that rank in the top 25, Costa Rica with 9th place and Mexico on the 12th place. I want to also highlight that Open Doors has started to track also the non-credit study abroad experiences, and Mexico and Canada rank in the top 3 worldwide destinations for non-for-credit study abroad. So why are these data important, or why is it important to you to connect with those who are doing study abroad? Because they are great tools for you to ask them to do a presentation on behalf of the university with the groups that they're working with in each of the countries where they are. So think about that as well as you continue to update your internationalization and recruitment strategies. Now, in terms of regional trends, the regional environment, geopolitical and economic factors, and even more so now, before we were focusing a lot on politics, and now we focus a lot on politics, economics, and health. You would be surprised, but this region, being the neighbor to the United States, is very aware of everything that happens in the US and the effects that all of these changes have in the US affect one way or another in many other ways, like trade, but also in terms of perception and what is covered in local media from the US. So you may want to keep that in mind when you're meeting the students and their families, because they will have some questions about things like the civil unrests and the safety and how things are being managed with COVID. So just for you to be prepared, there is a lot of awareness. Also, in our own region, we also have new governments. We have 6 new administrations. And of course, as governments are restarting, they are still trying to figure out what is new in terms of educational policies. Right now, hot topic, online education in the region, because that is one of the ways in which schooling can go on in most countries in this sub-region, and most countries are not prepared. They don't have policy that is clear and drafted, and they don't have the resource assigned for that. So we'll be coming back to that point in a moment. Also, in terms of acquisition power, you will find the country with the highest purchasing power, which is Canada, and then you will have the country with the least purchasing power in the whole Western Hemisphere in my portfolio. So keep that in mind as you talk to the students and you get questions from certain countries and the different realities in terms of what a student can afford and what a student can't afford, and what details in terms of cost structure and payment plans they could have access to from your institution. Workforce development is a big trend in the region as well, especially in Central America and the Caribbean. So, community colleges come in here very strong because we are looking to achieve those that technical skills in the future workforce for the region. Teacher training, English capacity building, also very big. Although before the pandemic, we were in a better position to support some of these government initiatives. Right now, I will be very honest with you, all initiatives that were taking place before to support teacher training and English training have been put on hold. So they have not been eliminated, just on hold. So we are hoping that as things progress, we will have more clarity, especially in countries such as Panama or the Dominican Republic, where we were seeing a lot of enthusiasm with the recent changes in government there. That's what's causing the changes or the pausing in the policy. Internationalization of higher education, it's not just mobility in this region. It wasn't before the pandemic, and it is even more not about mobility now. I will be very honest with you as well, and we are focusing a lot on online education, ways in which institutions locally can partner with US institutions to offer online experiences. A very popular model here in Mexico in particular is the COIL program. We just launched a new competition. So if you want to get more information about how you can partner with a local Mexican institution to develop these strategies and get some training for your teachers and your faculty, then send me an email afterwards and I'll be very happy to share all of the details. But this model is being replicated in different ways in other countries in the region, and there is very high interest from local higher education institutions to partner to offer online experiences to their students, but also to learn from US institutions in terms of what is happening, how you do it, what are the pros, what are the cons, what needs to be taking place as we learn. This is very new for us, online education, except for Mexico, I think, probably a little bit more advanced, but the rest of the region has not been very active on developing online curriculums at all levels, high school, higher education. So there's a great opportunity there for more collaboration. And then the other important thing for you to keep in mind is that there are other countries that are very actively competing with you. I guess it's no secret, due to proximity, Canada is a high contender. We have some countries that have very strong historical ties with Europe, so that is always gonna be there. But we do see new players coming in, especially China, and the growth in terms of Confucius centers and institutes that are being opened in the region, in particular in the Caribbean, in Central America, it raises a flag for us, a red flag. So we want to be sure that our students who still have the US as their #1 study abroad destination also very clear that yes, there are some great, very generous offers coming from other countries, but we will remind them about what our core values and what is unique about the US higher education system is. So I hope that you help us in that important task. In terms of opportunities with government scholarships, here you will find those countries that still are offering those government scholarships. They were a little bit on hold, but in the last couple of weeks, things have started to resume. There are changes that are happening. Some countries are adapting to allowing students who have received scholarships to do graduate degrees abroad, that they can do them online or start online at least. So we would have to look at country by country, but this is great news that the countries continue to offer the support to their local students and that they're being flexible with the limitations during the pandemic. So you will have access to these slides. So I won't get into all of the specifics per country, because I do have a lot of countries to cover, and unfortunately we have limited time, but I'd love to catch up. If you want to set up another call after this webinar to discuss any particular interest that you have, I'm more than happy to do that. We do have a lot of public-private partnership initiatives going on. Here are a few examples. Fulbright, partnering up with the private sector in some countries. We have NGOs, private sector and local government coming together to provide support to students. We have public and private partnerships happening. And then we just have NGOs that are making programs available to support our students. Mainly these are focusing on support for graduate students. Some of them do come also with a tag in terms of the field of study. So, again, we can discuss what some of these are, some of these opportunities. Also, I just want to mention that we do have the Education USA Global Guide. The next edition of this will be launching in the coming weeks, so you can take a look at some of the details of these programs there as well. Now, for going deeper into partnerships, here I wanted to describe what the opportunities are when you're thinking about identifying a potential partner in higher education in the region. Now, what are your opportunities? They do want to do student mobility right now on hold. A lot of interest in dual joint degrees, a lot of interest in articulation agreements, transfers, semester abroad. There is a lot of interest in research and faculty exchanges as well. And as I already mentioned, online education. Now, some of the challenges that you need to take into consideration when exploring this route, streamlining of the process could be a little bit challenging. Something that you think that could be simple is not so simple, especially depending on institutional type. If it's a public institution, if it's a private institution. So you may want to pick on your partner an institution that is similar in mission and values as yours. Sustainability and funding of the partnership is also a big question and something that you need to analyze before. What are you going to bring to this partnership, and what is that local institution going to bring to the partnership as well? Is it money? Is it in-kind? Is it human capital? What is it? All of that needs to be very clear from the get-go so you have realistic expectations. We are happy to help guide you in the process. Infrastructure is a big one. As you know, one of the main differences between the US higher education system and your liberal arts model is the on-campus residence and community. And in our part of the world, there are very few institutions that actually host the students as in living place. So so we don't have dorms, we don't have a lot of cafeteria services, and so when we're thinking about study abroad and hosting US institutions, you also want to consider what is this potential partner offering you so that your faculty and your students are comfortable with. Visas, there's always this discussion, especially on what types of visas would your students and your faculty be coming to into the region. So that's a conversation that needs to happen also early on. And then of course, accreditation and evaluation. So things to keep in mind. Now, getting into the specifics, an average student profile from Canada would be coming probably mainly from the area of Ontario that has the largest concentration of population within the student age, but also it has the highest concentration of higher education institutions and secondary institutions in Canada. Now, while this is great for you to say, oh, great, there are a lot of students in Ontario, we should focus there, you also must keep in mind that this idea everyone else has had. So how about expanding and exploring and maybe hoping to meet some students from other regions, especially the West Coast, where there's a lot of interest in the US, and not necessarily Vancouver, but I'm talking more Alberta, for example, where there are a lot of opportunities. The economy there continues to grow. So there are resources available for students, and they rarely get any contact or any visit from US higher education institutions. Of course, the Canadian dollar vis-a-vis the US dollar has devalued in the last couple of years. And to begin with, we all know that the subsidies on Canadian education were so high that Canadian students pay very little, as little as $5,000 a year to enroll in very high, good quality education. So why would they consider coming to the US? What is this one student looking for when they join our fair? If they have something in their own, a good option in their own backyard. So, just keep in mind that Canadians love to catch a deal. Now, in terms of what they're interested in, they're very interested in specialized programs, especially STEM, health, very big, business, law. The Canadian students love and they appreciate the opportunity to have an education in professional fields in the US, and especially there is an interest in licensing. So, so keep that in mind as well as we go through the fair, or whenever you're just planning a recruitment trip in Canada, that these are things that are gonna be appealing to Canadian students. There's high interest to engage in short-term graduate research opportunities and undergraduate, but mainly graduate. So if you and your graduate school is interested in partnering with a Canadian institution to offer these opportunities at the same time, they would like to host your students to come and do research in Canada. There are some initiatives and programs such as the MyTax program that is offering scholarships to US and Canadian students to go across the border and engage in research. So if you're not familiar with the MyTax program, look it up because it is a great opportunity for partnering. Sports, huge in Canada, as you know. Most of the students that you will meet at the fair or whenever you're doing recruitment in Canada will ask about sports, because 90% of them who are looking at the US are looking at the US with this path in mind. So, so again, if you already have Canadian students on campus that are sportsmen or sportswomen, be sure to share those experiences with the students as you talk to them. And then a growing trend, internships in Canada. What I found out during my last visit last April was that a lot of Canadian students are crossing the border, just finding opportunities on their own with tourist visa and no record of the internship. So this is a great area for us to explore. You know, what can you do as U.S. institutions if you are a J1 approved sponsor to offer internship, J1 visas for internship? Then I want to talk to you, because we are trying to motivate Canadian institutions to partner more with US higher education institutions so that these internships take place in a more formal way. And at the same time, of course, the Canadian institutions are interested in hosting US students, but we already saw earlier in this presentation that those numbers are going up. So there is great potential there as well. When we talk to Canadian students, if you have internship programs, be sure to mention them. In terms of the local economies, you know, what are the jobs of the future? And the reality is that most students are not necessarily aligning their own personal goals and interests with the jobs of the future. And so I feel it is our responsibility to help them make that connection. Everybody wants to be a business manager. Okay, but we don't have that many businesses to run around the world. We would hope, but we don't, and especially not now after the pandemic. So what are those areas where actually there's gonna be funding available, where there's gonna be growth? And so in Canada, that's healthcare, nursing, physical therapy, pharmacy, psychology, to name a few. Software engineering and design, and then aerospace engineering. So just for you to keep in mind, when you meet your Canadian students, you will want to make sure that you're mentioning some of these things to them as areas of opportunity. Well, moving on to Mexico. Well, one thing you would know about Mexico, if you have visited Mexico, is that we have very distinct and very diverse subregions within the country. So what are priorities in Mexico City? Maybe are a little bit different than what priorities are in Monterrey and what is happening in Guadalajara. And certainly none of these are the same as what is happening in Mérida and what is happening in Chihuahua and what is happening in San Luis Potosí. So I encourage you to become very familiar with our markets here in Mexico, because students will have different interests. Mainly, I think related to the economy and what is happening, what is big in that subregion of Mexico. Of course, we also have seen devalued currency. What we were able to buy in 2015 in US dollars, we now can only buy 60% off, those of us who are here in Mexico. So please keep that in mind, because families who are still interested and can afford to send their students, you know, will be very conscious and mindful of the steady devaluation that we have seen, and how can they make a plan, you know, a sustainable plan at least. You know, they ask a lot about freezes in college tuition, if that's a possibility for our students. You know, can the universities put a hold in and not increase tuition the next year? So questions that may come when you are either meeting, engaging with families, or during the fair as well. Very similar to Canada. Mexico, we have more than 3,000 higher education institutions here, a very diverse system too, very similar to the US, with universities, with colleges, with the equivalents to community colleges and technical institutes and things like that, with high quality education that it's completely free as well. So for Mexicans, when they are considering going abroad, they need to have that quality assurance, and they need to see where that something extra is. Why should they be encouraged and interested in going to the US when they already feel that they're very familiar with the US, that there's no much more for them to explore due to proximity? So, bring out your best game and show these Mexican students that you will meet that your destination where your school is could be culturally rich, could be diverse, could be edgy, could be fun and interesting, but at the same time that they're getting the highest quality education. What are some interests for Mexican students? Engineering and STEM, business administration, social sciences, public policy, high interest in short-term research exchanges. The US Embassy here in Mexico is even providing support to develop and establish programs that encourage these short-term research exchanges. We do get some funding from the private sector, from the public sector to do so as well. So a great opportunity. If you do offer these, please do let us know so that we can put you in all of the big players' radars and connect you. Internships, very, very much high interest, vocational training, and of course, due to a lot of the social and civil situations that we do see here in Mexico, mainly being the pathway for a lot of migrants to the United States and our own citizens here in Mexico who want to migrate. We have seen an increased need to have more training on immigration issues. So a lot of lawyers out there who want to go to school in the US and learn more about human rights and immigration and how we can help all of those populations that are passing through Mexico on their hope to make it to the United States. In terms of local economies, pay close attention to manufacturing, aerospace, automotive, very big here in Mexico. A lot of these multinational corporations that are here are telling us we don't have enough qualified Mexicans or trained Mexicans to take on the jobs that we have. We have to import talent. And imported talent is more expensive than local talent. And so we are trying to help local higher education institutions also adapt their curriculum so that they can meet the needs of the local industry. So a big part of this is also trying to attract US higher education institutions to be a partner. English for specific purposes, it's very much in demand here in Mexico. So again, we can have a chat about that after this session if you have the ability to provide those kinds of programs. Electronics, medical devices, textile, and oil, agriculture, and hospitality are some of those sectors where we see growth and the current government investing, well, of course, this was pre-pandemic, investing resources in. Now, in terms of Central America, well, one thing that you will know about Central America is that we do see a lot of political instability, lots of strikes, and security concerns for families. So a lot of middle-income families are making an effort to pursue private education locally at the high school level, and they definitely are looking at ways in which they can support their students to go abroad to study. And mainly the US. If there is a region in my whole portfolio that is a fan of the US, it is Central America. If you ask a Central American student, what is your goal? Is the US. What's the number 2 choice? The US. What's the number 3 choice? The US. So, so we do have a great area of opportunity there. Families are aware of the fact of the cost of education in the US, but they are very welcoming of options, of all of the options, getting creative. Community colleges are a huge success in this region because of your cost structure, because of the flexibility, because of the possibility to transfer later on. So, so please be ready because you will get answers from our Central American countries. I was tracking the numbers of registrations that we had, and I believe our top registrant sub-region and country is Central America and Nicaragua in particular. And Nicaraguans are loving the community colleges. So keep that in mind. If you're community colleges and you don't have a relationship with Central America and Nicaragua, then maybe this briefing will be helpful to prepare for what is coming your way in the fair and afterwards. I will mention as well that we do have a number of US institution branch campuses in the region, and those are very popular as well for the students. So a lot of these are offering that the students begin in this branch campus and then transfer to the US later on. One thing to note for Central America is that most countries, the academic calendar is different from the North American academic calendar. They align more with the South. So most likely their academic year will run between February and March until November, December. This year, of course, due to the pandemic, classes were put on hold. So we're seeing a little bit of delay in finishing this school year, but that also affects the timing and the timeline in which students apply for US institutions and how much time there is between the time that they graduate and the time that they actually start studies in the US. So something to address, in terms of ideas and suggestions of what students and how they can use their time. So we do get a lot of questions from Central America asking if they start in a local institution, even as audit, and then start their studies in the US, because of course their parents don't want to have their children not doing anything. A lot of them look for jobs in the meantime while they're waiting to start their studies in the US, but that is something. So you will find that, for example, in Central America, a lot of our students have experience working in call centers. So maybe just a curious fun fact for you to keep in mind as you meet the students. In terms of interest, STEM, health, I mentioned already, high interest in two-year institutions and the transfer model. Online education, very big in Central America. They mainly want to learn how to do it in an efficient way, looking for resources because there aren't many, especially in the public institutions. So ways to find sustainable models are welcome. Short-term exchanges, pre-professional experiences, and graduate studies. As I mentioned earlier, this is my sub-region that has shown progressive and steady growth in interest of graduate degrees in the United States. And in terms of the local economies, what kinds of programs? Agriculture, manufacturing, IT is a big one. Tourism, of course, and Central America is a heavy region on services. So be sure to highlight all of those programs to the students as you meet them. And then finally, we have the Caribbean, which I think is the region in my portfolio with the highest potential to be an area for you to explore. So first, most countries are English speakers, so they don't have that challenge anymore, with a few exceptions, but most of them already speak English. Now you need to do a little bit of extra homework with the Caribbean because we do have some interesting educational systems. Some of them follow the British system, some of them follow the French system, some of them have their own adapted systems. If you are not familiar yet with CXC, I encourage you to look them up. We do have a recording. I'm happy we had updates from them earlier this year when they had to postpone all of their regional testing. That was huge for us because most students who need to sit on their CXCs and CAPE examinations were not allowed or able to do it on time. And even so, when they rescheduled them later on in the year, it was a little bit of a challenge. So we are expecting new testing and examination to take place in January and again in July of next year. One thing I will note about this region is that you will not find many four-year institutions of higher education. Mainly, they do have local community colleges. And then the biggest competitor to the US within the whole region is the University of the West Indies. Now, while that is a challenge because they have branch campuses all across the Caribbean region, they also want to partner with US institutions. They want to explore the opportunity of joint and dual degrees and the opportunity to host students and faculty coming to the University of the West Indies. So when a door closes, a window opens. Well, this is, I think, a big window, and one topic that I love to have discussions about, and that our Education USA advising centers are very well connected with in terms of the institution within the region, and can help you make those connections as well. And the other biggest thing that I will mention about Caribbean students is that within my portfolio, and I would risk saying that from the whole Western Hemisphere, it's the only region that understands the concept of education as an investment. This being that families don't see the cost of education as a burden, and they are willing to go to a lot of different processes, even mortgages and selling cars or selling homes and things like that, to make sure that their children have education, and their preference is high on the US. There are concerns right now about the civil unrest. As you know, or you can imagine, in the Caribbean, we have mainly Afro-Caribbean populations, and the whole Black Lives Matter movement raised a lot of questions and concerns about student safety on campus, and what should be their involvement if they were Caribbean students in the US at the time of all of these civilian unrest in the US. So you may get a few questions about that, about how you handle that and what your advice is for students. I know families are being a little bit more cautious and traditional in the Caribbean to pursue the study abroad route, not just to the US in general, but they are not canceling their plans. They're just putting them on hold. And we're really hopeful that with the fair, that you will have an opportunity to help keep them motivated. In terms of their interest, business, law, and health are very big in the Caribbean, so be ready. You're gonna get a lot of questions about your law programs and medicine. So feel free to just direct them to Education USA. I believe our our fair coordinators have produced a very nice explanatory video on what the process of studying medicine in the US is, so you can refer them to go and enjoy that video, and of course send them to our Education USA booth, where we will be more than happy to share with them the details about that. Engineering, communications, and technology, another big region with interest on graduate. As you can imagine, if they don't have a lot of four-year institutions, then they don't have a lot of graduate programs that are being offered in the region. However, the growth in interest is there, and we want to make sure that they get all of the information on your graduate programs. In terms of economies, heavy services. So another factor is that their purchasing power is going to be very much affected after this pandemic, because technically there has been no tourism in the Caribbean this year. And so a lot of those families that lived of that are probably going to be a little bit more conservative in the way that they're going to be spending their funds in the coming year. Green economies are very big. My last trips before I got to be locked down here in Mexico City was to Barbados, Antigua, and St. Lucia. And before that, I was in Guyana and Suriname. And in every airport that I landed to enter the country, there were walls that were talking about and highlighting green and blue economies. So definitely big government efforts to help those become the careers of the future for the students. Well, I hope that that was helpful for you. I have another poll if you want to help me here with some of your answers. Just want to learn a little bit about what the current status of your institutions is. Wow, great. So you do have students from my region, but I see that mainly you have students, you have Canada, Central America, so that's great. And you have very little, the number where I see a lot of, or the biggest area of opportunity is Mexico. So that is great news. And your campus is mainly, most of you, hybrid education. Well, thank you so much for giving me this extra context. This is very helpful. Moving forward, I'm just gonna share with you some updates and what we are seeing in terms of COVID affecting the region. In terms of schooling, most countries have resumed or started with a few delays. Here are the countries with those delays. And the only country in my region where there's no schooling taking place is Guyana. In terms of how this is being offered in Canada and most Caribbean countries is a blended hybrid model. In Mexico and Central America, mainly online. Examinations, as I mentioned, have been postponed in the Caribbean mainly, and in some Central American countries that require them. In some cases, they have been canceled, so students who will be graduating this year won't have those credentials that they had before. So we appreciate you being mindful of that. Mexico, Panama, and St. Lucia have reported changes on policy on online education, all for positive, except for Mexico, which has announced, and we are still trying to figure out, that they will be taxing online education. So probably we'll be hosting a webinar, a follow-up webinar, to share with you where the updates are on that new tax. Testing, at least in 50% of the countries, is reported as being available, so students can register for it. But as you know, and you probably heard, these are being postponed and canceled very frequently. So we appreciate all of you who have gone test optional for all of our students, because this is a very challenging thing to overcome. And of course, the competition, like I mentioned earlier. In terms of country reopenings, most countries have partially reopened. A few Caribbean countries are fully reopened, and a few of those who had fully reopened are now back into full lockdown because the numbers of COVID had increased. With the exception of a couple of Caribbean countries, travel to and from the region is resuming, either through humanitarian flights. We are starting to see some commercial flights. We do have countries that never close their borders, like Mexico and Nicaragua, but in general, most of the countries are now open and are hosting flights, and travel. 12 out of 25 countries in my portfolio are level 4 in terms of the travel advisory. So even if you could travel, the US Department of State is telling you to be cautious about traveling to these 12 countries. Consular services has resumed to some extent in most of the countries except Canada, El Salvador, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Suriname. We have consulates that are fully operational with student visas. This is a priority. And then we have a couple that also are offering emergency appointments and considering and processing visas that way. 95% of our advising centers in the region continue to work 100% virtual. We appreciate all of you reaching out to them and asking them how you can join and how you can organize virtual visits with them. And that is great. We're trying to be creative and come up with ways in which we can accommodate all of your offers to visit us. And while there are concerns about health and safety, students prefer to study in the US in person still. I cannot tell you how many students were so anxious this summer to wait for those consulates to reopen because they did not want to start their education in the US online. They wanted to go to your campuses. So, you know, that is good news as well. You know, the interest is still there. And those who cannot start in person on campus, you may find a little bit hesitant to begin with online education, and some of them are considering maybe taking gap years, but we are trying to be here for them and to come up with innovative and creative ways, show them pathway programs, these summer internships or fall internships that they can do. So ways in which we can keep them engaged with the higher education community in the US. So let's see. In terms of the virtual fair, I just put together, you know, a slide just to confirm with you that the slide or the time frame in which NCAC will be represented will be from 3 to 6 p.m. We also will be hosting some webinars. I wanted to share these with you so that if you have students who have a lot of questions about any of them, you can direct them during that time frame to participate in those webinars. So I think that this is helpful for you. And then finally, some best practices. I think mainly what I want to share with you is that you should have a document ready where you can cover all of these points, and basically you can copy paste answers to the chat box so that you can be more efficient in your engagement with the students, especially those that are asking more general questions. And that then you can have a little bit more time to manage the request to have a video call with those who are really interested in your institution, who have done a little bit more research, and who you think are going to be a more solid lead for your university. So if you want to take a screenshot, of course, again, you will have access to this, but I just wanted to share this great tip with you. If you have the information in Spanish, even better for the Spanish-speaking countries. And the other thing is we may see some counselors coming through the fair. So if you have digital counselor packages, then also have those ready that you can share with them. And then ways in which you can engage with NCAC after the fair. Well, first of all, you know, I encourage you to reach out to those Education USA centers in the region, in those countries that caught your attention after this briefing today. We also want to invite you, if you have not heard yet, in NCAC, we are hosting a series of regional webinars. We have a program called Webinar Wednesday. So every Wednesday, a group of advisors from different countries host a webinar on different topics from all the Education USA steps to study in the US. So, so we put together content, we invite guest speakers. So if you have reached out to us to let us know and share your expertise, we most likely already put you down into our database, and we will be reaching out to invite you to join us. We have different models for these. These are just presentations. We also have panels in which is more about conversation, in which we just have questions available for the students. So we hope that you will be interested. We thought of this initiative in a way to maximize all of the requests that we were getting in terms of doing webinars. So instead of you doing the same webinar over and over again for 10 different countries, we thought you would do one for the entire region, and we would have an opportunity to do a different one on a different topic the next week. We also are continuing on with our counselor trainings. So we are looking for trainers. We'll put out a call in the coming weeks so that you can volunteer if you want to participate in these. This is a great way. What I'm hearing from college counselors is that they cannot handle the amount of requests that they're getting from higher education institutions to do virtual visits. So this is a good way for you to get them to know about your institution. We are hosting a series of virtual showcases. You may have seen our Canada Education USA team, well, of one person, because we only have one advisor for now. She has been putting these monthly showcases, which is a series of back-to-back webinars, presentations from your institution. We are hosting a couple more in the next coming months. So we want you to keep signing up for those, because that's a great way to reach the Canadian students. Engage with your alumni. We want to see those alumni videos or your current student videos. So please do send them our way if you have them, because nothing speaks louder to a student than another student or a former student from their own country, especially. Interacting with social media with us. I even encourage you to follow me on my Instagram channel. Like I said, I post a lot. Mainly I created these for you as my audience, so to share opportunities with you and to share updates of what is happening in terms of programming from the region. We also are hosting speed meeting events for student cohorts, so kind of like fairs or reverse fairs where the students meet with you and then they swap. They sign up to meet with you for 10 to 15 minutes. So we've had some successful models recently, and we hope to continue offering these as well as an opportunity. And then I just want to invite you to fill out the survey at the end of this webinar so that I am able to collect a little bit more extra information from you. I want to thank you for your attention. Here is my contact, and I'm happy to answer any questions if we have any. Thank you, Juanita.
Thank you, Maria Mercedes. I think that was great. We'll see our Q&A section, and I'll let you know what questions we have. So I think this was sent a little bit before you touched on that point, but could you expand on internationalization, not just mobility?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Of course. So there are a number of countries in my region with a number of initiatives that are looking at internationalization, not just as having or establishing exchanges, so students going and students coming, but expanding from that. We're talking about research, we're talking about technology exchanges, we're talking about faculty going from country to the US, and we're definitely now having the conversation about online education and collaboration with models such as COIL, as I mentioned earlier as an example. But that's pretty much where we are on that.
There was a question on the COIL. It said, what is COIL competition? Is there a web link about the program?
Yes, absolutely. And I apologize. I should have followed my own advice and have my own Word document where I could copy paste, but I didn't do it. But I'm happy if you shoot me an email, I will send it to you. Or if you want to research, it's on the AMPEI, AMPEI.org website, which is an association of higher education institutions here in Mexico. They are the ones who are managing the competition and the program. But I'm more than happy to provide more details if you send me an email.
Okay, another one. Do you have the specific criteria for government scholarships?
Yes, in my region, that's very varied. I understand in other regions, you know, they follow the Shanghai rankings or that is not the case in my portfolio. In some situations, it depends on who is the head of the ministry and how the ministry wants to handle that. In the past, we've even seen, you know, the friendships, you know, or the historical ties. I went to that school, so that school is going to be in my list. And so those kinds of things. We try to work with them and teach them and train them on what are better ways in which they can establish who would be a partner. I will say that currently, we don't necessarily have a list in some of the countries that offer the scholarships, but what I do see is that they do like to sign the MOUs. So for signing the MOU, when this is all over, I do encourage you to think about traveling to the region, because we are very heavy on in-person meetings, in able to develop trust or build trust. So definitely after that, exploring the MOU route will be beneficial for you to be a part of those programs.
Okay, these are two kind of like similar questions about the exams in Central America. So any word on the BGCSE exam in the Bahamas, also the GED offer in the Caribbean countries, and the second one that's similar is, I am wondering if EdUSA has any clear guidance or references compiled listing the intended exit examinations by country, mainly the Caribbean with CSEC, well, all these exams, cancellations, postponements, as we typically look for these as proof of secondary completion for posting advanced grade.
Yes, excellent questions. Thank you so much. And we know how frustrating this is, well, first, mainly for the students, and then for you all to have a parameter to measure the students' abilities. At this time, I'll start with question number 2. Where do we have this information per country? If you look at each of our fact sheets that we produce every year and that are available on our website, you have information on each country's educational systems and what exams are required from either the regional or their local examination agency. So for that, you know, CXC, for most of the Caribbean, or for the Bahamas with a specific version of the examinations. In terms of the news, or when we are all going along and waiting. Unfortunately, Bahamas is one of those countries that has had to go back to lockdown because of the numbers of cases. And even though we continue to work, you know, I announced we are reopening our center. We just hired an advisor this week, so we're very excited about that. We'll be announcing that shortly. We, through the U.S. Embassy, have been reaching out to each of these testing organizations, and they are the ones who are providing the updates. Back in May, we hosted a webinar, but your question now gives me a suggestion that maybe it is time for us to organize a second webinar providing updates on where we are with these Caribbean examinations. So thank you for the question.
Okay, there is another one here in the chat. Let me get it here. How can four-year schools promote ourselves as options for transfer after community colleges?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a great question. Well, you're mainly probably asking about the Caribbean community colleges, the local community colleges, or maybe some of the Central America students who actually enroll in community colleges in the US first and then transfer. Well, first of all, reach out to us with your partner. So those community colleges that you already have an articulation agreement with, you know, why don't you talk to them and say, let's send an indecent proposal to Maria Mercedes so that we can do a webinar on a 2+2, you know, the model, and how students from the region can have access to that experience. So I welcome that suggestion. So send me an email. We actually this morning had a meeting about with the regional webinars team, and we were thinking about who would be good presenters for that topic, because we do have it on our list. And then for the Caribbean, where they already have their own community colleges and they love to retain their own students, they don't want to lose them, but they do want to support them on transferring, then again, culturally, I think the best practice is to travel to the region, to meet with the community college officials, to present them an option on what the transfer process would look like. I'm hoping, well, the breaking news here is that our center in Bahamas will now be hosted at the Bahamas Vocational Technical Institute, and one of their main goals to having this Education USA Center is actually to develop more transfer agreements with four-year institutions in the US. So maybe you want to be a part of that project with us and learn along together. But I think that culturally, the best practice is to, again, establish that connection in person, explain it, show them, maybe invite them to your campus so that they can see and that they can understand what it is that they need to do in order to prepare the students in those 2 years locally, so that then they would be ready to transfer. Where I see is the biggest challenge is that there is a disconnect between the curriculums in these community colleges in the region and the community colleges in the United States.
Okay, we had someone agreeing, or well, saying that they love the idea of the webinar about the testing agencies in the region. So, and they say that would be super helpful. So that's a great idea to host that webinar. And a final question that we received about the fair: will the registered student list be sent out after the fair? Yes, we will be sending a list of the students that agreed to share their contact information with you. So we will compile that list and excuse me, the students that agreed to share their contact information and attended the fair. So we will be sharing that list the following Monday after the event. And we will share a separate list of the students that visited your booth, so that you have kind of like the more specific list of students interested in your institution. But that will be sent out the week following the fair, because we need to download those kind of like one by one. So it will take us a little bit more time. So I don't know if we have any additional questions. I think that's all. Thank you all for joining us today. And we are very excited to see you soon at the fair. And feel free to reach out to me and to, well, Maria Mercedes with any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.